Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
On today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the new film, The Long Walk, as well as episodes 4 through 6 of Alien Earth.
First up today, we have a review of The Long Walk. So this is the latest Stephen King adaptation. It was actually the first book he ever wrote, but Carrie was published before this one actually came out. But they've been trying for a while to get this made into a movie, and I'm glad they finally got it here because it was an outstanding film. Like, it could be seen as a very simple film because the basic premise is you have this kind of dystopian future where money and everything is just very hard. Life is very hard for people. So they take volunteers, one from every state, and they go on the long walk. So this is a military parade taking these kids on a walk where they cannot stop. If they slow down under 3 miles an hour, now in the book it was 4, but in the movie it's 3 miles an hour. If they slow down below that, they get warnings. Do you get too many warnings or you can't move anymore? That's the end of the line for you. Literally, like, they end their lives. There's only, at the end of this, only one person remains, and I gotta say, it was a really fantastic film.
Yeah, I really dug it, man. And on the surface, it doesn't sound that exciting. It's just, I mean, literally the entire movie is a bunch of guys walking down the road, and they're constantly moving. It was exhausting to watch, just because, like, you would figure, like, walking that long with no breaks, no stops, no nothing. Like,
Can't sleep.
Yeah, you can't sleep. You can't stop to use the restroom, and that was visited very graphically in a couple points in this movie that you and I even both like. As much as we like to see certain things in films, it's just shying away from practical ways to use the bathroom while walking. And very graphic there. But yeah, man, this was such an emotional gut punch. And I know you and I both came out of it just, we don't really like to talk too much about the movies after we see them until we come and do this. But we were both like, man, that got me, man. That it told a very heavily emotional story about these guys who are bonding through the fact that they're going on this walk together, and them knowing ahead of time only one of them is going to make it out alive. Like, it's a really interesting piece of humanity that's visited here with all of these guys, and this is very Hunger Games coded, I would say. Like, this is very much like a kind of like ahead of its time version of the Hunger Games,
with a director who had something to do with the Hunger Games as well.
Yeah, so I mean, you get the tie in there, but the story of itself is very much Hunger Games-esque, where you're asking for tributes instead of there being 12 districts. There's 50 states. There's 50 guys on this walk, and it just does an incredible job of just gripping you and taking you on this ride, where they do such a good job of diving into the stories of all of these main characters here that you're pulling for all of them, knowing good and well that only one of them is going to make it out.
Yeah, and it's something that has so many different layers. The book originally was wrote in the 60s, published in the 70s. It was supposedly known like an allegory for the Vietnam War and the draft, and how they romanticize, like, this is how you're going to serve your country and everyone's going to love you and this or that. And you see the harsh reality, especially back then, of that's not how it was. Like, you were giving your lives for things that maybe didn't even matter and you weren't sure about. And each character has their own little journey. They're all walking the same path, but they all have different reasons for being there. And they also have their own because, I mean, you get the cocky one who thinks he's just going to walk away with it and it'd be fine. And you see that change, and you get the guy who can dish it out, but he can't take it back. And, the specimens who are super in shape and how they handle it. And then just the run-of-the-mill geeky and regular guys. Like, you get such a different walk of life with each of them. But yeah, with something that's so simple with just walking is going to really rely on the performances. And everybody gave outstanding performances. But I got to say, Cooper Hoffman as Ray and David Johnson as Peter, they were the leads, but they really care. I mean, David gave such an incredible performance, as did Cooper Hoffman. If you don't know, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son is Cooper Hoffman, and I kind of felt him channeling his dad a little bit there, as his dad was such an incredible actor and stuff. And you got a great, really emotional, impactful performance out of Cooper Hoffman in here.
For sure, he's phenomenal in this movie, but really, in my opinion, the star of this movie is David Johnson, who played Peter. He was incredible, like, playing that linchpin character who kind of keeps the whole group focused for 95% of this movie. Like, he has a little bit of a moment of weakness there at some point, but he's doing, like, getting people motivated to keep going and having their, their small group of guys, their musketeers, as they call them, to kind of stick together and make it through as far as they can. And it's got a little bit of everything in this movie. It's got the emotional depth. It's got the heaviness of the story, but it's also got humor. It's got, just so many different elements to this film. It's got the brutality and the violence, and it doesn't skimp on anything. You kind of run a full gamut of emotions when, talking about this story and what they go through, and it's just really heavy and just so well done, man. I can't praise them enough for the way they shot it, the way these guys performed.
It looked beautiful, especially some of the night scenes where they're just illuminated by the lights on the vehicles. Just looked great. Incredible set pieces on this, and what's essentially just a long road that they're walking down, and the way they shoot it was just gorgeous. And cinematically, they did a really phenomenal job of putting this film together. But man, it was just this is one of the first films in a long time that I can say emotionally really stuck with me for a decent amount of time since we've seen it. Like, it's been a couple days now since we've seen it, and I'm still thinking about things from that movie today. And that's not something I can say about every film we review, but I'm still thinking about different things from this movie today as we're recording this, and that doesn't always happen for me. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that the deaths were so impactful. Like, it got brutal, it got extremely violent at times, but it had that impact that, especially like the very first, one who fails to maintain everything, it just, you see it, and it's just a wow moment, because, it doesn't shy away. It shows you graphically of them being killed, and you're right there with the characters of that shock moment, and it plays with that in different ways, because you'll get various different deaths, and it all hits you in impactful different ways, and then the ones that they don't show as much still has impact, because you're looking at how the other characters are still walking, how they're reacting to it, and how it hits them. And I'll even give a big shout out to Judy Greer, she's not in the film much, but she hits such emotional notes every time there. She plays the mother of Ray Garrity, and like I said, she just gets to show up at the beginning and a little bit in the middle there, but it's impactful, because she shows you a real raw emotional how a mother would feel with her son doing something like this. Like, they know going into this what's going to happen. If they don't maintain and do everything, they're going to die. They know that only one of them out of the 50 are going to live, and they know that going in. It's not a surprise, but it does surprise them when it starts happening, because the reality of it doesn't fully set in. And like I said, there's just so many layers to the story between the relationships and the bonds that form between the guys, but also about the military presence, and about the Major, who's played by Mark Hamill, which, he was just in Life of Chuck, but he gets to play a much darker, gritty character in here, that it was interesting to see him play, because, we've seen him voice the Joker, and we know he's Luke Skywalker, and he's done quite a lot of different things, but is seeing him be a more dramatic, darker role, and don't really get any humor out, other than one moment where the kids are telling him off, and he's like, "That's the spirit." Like, that was the levity moments of where you get those jokes are placed in like the perfect spots that you need some levity to be.
For sure. And like you said, they run through the whole gamut of emotions in this, and they start off like everybody, like you said, everybody knows what's happening, but they all show up like with this hopeful optimism, like, hey, it's gonna be me that makes it. I'm gonna make it, and I'm gonna have this vast fortune that's promised to the winner, including one wish that they have to grant. And what's your wish going to be when you win, besides being, wealthy? What is one thing you're going to ask for? And they have some fun moments talking about what some of them would do, especially the one with Ben Wong, who plays Hank in there, who, if you've seen Ben Wong, you know the face if you've seen Karate Kid Legends. He's the kid in the Karate Kid, but he has a very funny moment talking about his, and then you get some more impactful, in-depth ones like, oh, I want to do this to help change the world for the better, and all this other stuff. Like, they talk about a little bit of everything in here, but yeah, you see that sudden what's really impactful about that first death in particular is, for a good chunk of the beginning of the film until that first death happens, you have these guys with like we're all just going to bond and everything's good, and we're just going to keep each other going and everything. It's not until that first death hits that you just see that kind of like light switch go off with them, like, oh, we know it's real, but now it's real. And you see that realization set in. They do such a good job of like emoting with their faces and their body language and the way that they carry themselves. Like they're all like standing up and just kind of sauntering about. And then you see that first death happen and you see their body posture change as they start to have that realization set in of what's actually happening and how real it very, very real this situation that they find themselves are in. And you kind of see their demeanor change. It's just a really powerful moment that really sets in just how serious it is of what they're going through. Like, yeah, you can be, romanticized. You can romanticize about the, the winnings and the wishes and everything like that. But you have that very human reaction to seeing somebody die like that and how you have to keep pushing forward. Because one good thing they do about this film is talk about not only how physically this can affect you, having to just walk without stopping, but also the mental toll that it takes on you too, because you have people who get sick through this. You have people who can't control their, bodily functions at some points. You have people whose bodies just fail them. You have people who just mentally snap at points, and they do a good job of kind of covering all the bases of things that could happen in a situation like this, and it's just so well done.
Yeah, because you're dealing with a lot of trauma. I mean, they're watching other people die, which they may or may not have, seen, even though this is a much rougher world and everything that it's dealing with, but they also have their own issues, like the bully who can't take it, and he can dish it out, and he dishes it out to a point that causes a death of another person and stuff. But they have to walk nonstop. They get food and water provided to them, but it's like little squeeze tubes of food, and they can get the canteen refilled and everything. But it's also if they step off the road.
Yeah.
There's no warning with that. It's like it's instant death because they expect to, if you're going to try to run or hide or something else, they're not giving you that step. Like once you step off the road, that's the end of it for you. So, yeah, it deals with so many different layers. And like I've mentioned, the levity, the lighter moments, the joking works well, but then you get the bonding moments where they're sharing stuff about their lives and why they're here. And, they start talking about their wishes and what they want to do. And some people don't want to say it because it's like, well, it's like the birthday wish. If you say it, it's not going to come true.
Right.
Everything and like how they're going to spend the money, as you mentioned with like Hank and what he said there. This was a great moment for him too, because I can't remember something else I've seen him in other than Karate Kid Legends, so this might have been his second film or second real big film. And he was great for the character that he was playing. And you really got to see the torment and things that really started happening to him. But each of them kind of goes through their own journey throughout this. They deal with, all right, this is how I am coming in, and then I make a bond and a brothership and a friendship, but then people start dying, and you see how they all react to it differently. Some of them aren't as phased as the others, and some of them are really phased and hurt by it. But yeah, it does get graphic. It does get really raw with its emotions at times, with the violence, but it's because they want those deaths to be impactful. Like you really need to feel what is happening, just like the walkers and stuff do. And like I said, this was just an incredible film. Like I enjoyed it a whole lot more. I didn't go into it thinking I wasn't going to like it.
Sure.
But it had such a bigger, profound impact on me because of the raw emotion. Like I said, it's a simple premise in a way that they're just walking, but it's those performances that the entire crew, like I said, we talked about Cooper and David being the standouts, and even with Ben being a standout as well, but they all just work together so incredibly well to give you that sense of camaraderie and bonding, but also the little picking in between some of the characters that get that in there. Mm-hmm. They said they were walking up to 15 miles a day filming this movie, so they were getting some legit cardio and everything in there, where even Cooper said, like, yeah, like when you're walking 15 miles a day to film this nonstop to try to, get the footage that you need, because it's like you don't cut away that often from them just walking. And then you get the emotional stuff and the deaths on top of that. He said it really made him personally work through some stuff. It forced a lot of the actors, and we've heard a lot of negativity and other things about being a method actor, but he said it kind of forced everybody to be a method actor, because you're out there in the rain, you're out there walking 15 miles a day. Like it forces you to really kind of go into your character's shoes more, which I think really helped the performances, even though it's, that's a lot of demand. I don't know how long they filmed that, but he's thinking 15 miles a day, typical 1 to 2 months for something like this. That's a lot of walking.
Yeah, man, and they do such a good job of just diving into, like you said, everybody's backstories. It forces you to care, and it makes the character deaths, like you said, hit you so much more because you're like, oh, I feel for, one of the other Musketeers that we didn't. I forget the actor's name, but he gave such an incredible performance too, of like that Southern Louisiana boy that grew up dirt poor and was doing needed the money more than the wish. But that death in particular really got me because he was one of the main Musketeers here, and spoiler alert a little bit, but like you get the death of him just like coming to the acceptance of the fact that he's not going to make it, and just him like leaning on Ray and Peter, and it's just like, hey man, can you, like, you see him like kind of accepting, and he's like, hey, takes off his necklace, can you give this to my grandma, can you do like this, that, and the other for me, and you just see it, and he's the one that got me, and I choked up a little bit when they did it, and he was just like, I want you to make this promise, don't watch them do it. Just keep walking. Like, because you see them like looking back and seeing it happen, and just the shock on their faces, and they form that bond so well. He's just like, my last ask is that when they do this, just keep walking, don't watch it happen. And I was just like, it got me, because like you were like going in, they're not gonna make it, and like most of the characters in here aren't gonna make it, but you start to connect to these guys in this story, and it's just the power of the storytelling that was happening here. Like, even that, I was just like, oh man, just devastated after that. And I was just, they hooked me line and sinker, man. I was there for the entire ride for this one, man. And that one in particular got me. There were some other really brutal ones that were pretty good. I like the one guy who was kind of like one of the buffer guys, who was like one of the last ones standing, and he did what he did. I won't spoil that death for you, but he had a pretty impactful moment too, and that one in particular really got me, because I was just like, man, what a way to go, and what an honorable way to like kind of do it, and like save your friends a little bit of extra like cherry on top of the torture that they're going to go through, seeing you, knowing you're not going to make it to the end. And it was a really powerful moment for sure.
Yeah, those deaths where they realize, like, I can't go on, I have nothing left. Like, these guys are teens to 20s. Like, they're not very old guys. Like, they're young kids still, basically young adults. And when they come to those realizations, like, I don't have anything left, or you just see on the face, or one of them gets an ankle issue, and you see it on his face, like, I want to keep going, but I can't. I physically can't. And it lets you sit in those moments that you're sitting there with them. Like, they don't want to give up, and they don't want to lay down and die in this, but they have nothing left in them. And those hit hard. But then also those who do give up because they know, like, I have nothing left in me. I'm sick, I'm hurt, or I'm just exhausted. I can't do it. And like you said with that one, like, he just told him, like, I'm done, don't watch it. But yeah, it made sure, like, the Hunger Games, you could say, like, not many of the deaths had a huge impact in there,
right?
Because you weren't sitting in it. Like, you had a few that were impactful, but almost every one of these were impactful because you got to see the emotion, you got to see what they were going through, what their story was, and how it affected others, and you got to sit in it a little bit too. And like, I think that's the biggest thing with this one, is that it made you feel those deaths. It wasn't throwaway stuff that we're just going to kill a bunch of kids and we're going to do this. You're going to feel those deaths. You're going to feel what happens to these characters, and you're going to be affected by it. And if you're not, I don't know how you can sit through this film and not be affected by it stuff. And, they do make, kind of to go off of that a little bit, they do make a few changes from the books, including like towards the ending and the end and stuff with it. But I think it went through everything, and it ended pretty much perfectly as this movie needed to be. Like, it has such heart, grit, emotion, and brutal impact on the deaths that it was probably, to me, the best Stephen King adaptation I've watched. And there's been a ton of them. Yeah. But to me, this is probably the best, just because of that impact that they had. And like I said, it's all on the performances by these guys, and they did a fantastic job. Yeah,
one of the things we always push for in these films is you get a finite amount of time to tell a story, right? Mm-hmm. So you get anywhere from, some movies burn through it in an hour and a half, some movies take 3 to 4 hours to tell this full story. This, I think, found the perfect balance of not overstaying its welcome while also just going for it completely with character development and story movement and, just hitting the beats of the story they wanted to tell so perfectly and having each moment mean something and have impact. And it was so laser focused on doing that, and it was done so effectively. Like, there's so many movies that we watch that is slightly missing on this, slightly missing on that, or maybe could use a little bit more time focusing on this or what have you. And I don't have any of those criticisms from this movie at all. Like, I agree. It's easily, in my opinion, the best Stephen King film adaptation. And there's some really, really good ones that have been done. I know Carrie's an all-time classic horror film. Like, there's several others that are hit or miss depending on the movie. Pet Sematary was a crazy one back in the day too. But this one, man, they did such a good job of applying it to a futuristic setting, practically for the year 2025, right? So you have certain technological elements that are involved in it too. Like, you have the one scene where they're yelling back at in protest a little bit, and the guy's playing the song from a device and what have you. And it's just so smartly written and performed and just done beautifully. The acting in this is phenomenal. It's visually stunning. It's gripping emotionally from a character development perspective. And it really, if you allow yourself to get lost in this story, you are going to feel several different emotions. And I love that in a story. And it's just done so well, almost to perfection in this film. I don't have a much negative, if anything, to say about the film. Honestly, I really don't. And that's so hard because we see so many movies and it's so easy to nitpick this. I really don't have many nitpicks for this.
Yeah, The Long Walk is a beautifully dark, emotional, hard-hitting film. Cooper Hoffman, David Johnson give incredible performances. They're definitely going to be out there for awards and Oscars and stuff for what they give because of the emotion and the heart. It's violent, it's brutal, it's hard-hitting, and I don't see how you walk away from this movie without being affected from it. Like, it'll make you think in so many different ways. There's so many different layers to it. It is, to me, the best Stephen King adaptation I've seen, and I've gone back and forth on the score I'm going to give, but I'm giving this a 9.5. Like, it is so close to me to almost getting a 10 because it had such an impact, and it's left me thinking about it and emotionally affected by it that it's one of the best films of the year.
Easily. And I was struggling with that too. I was like, do I want to give it a 10? Do I want to give it a 9.5? I'm going to lie just a little bit on the side of caution and give it a 9.5. I'm really tempted to give it a 10 just for the emotional depth and everything that it does to, like, almost literal perfection in this. There's a few things, like, they go a little too far with some of the practical things, in my opinion, like the bath. It's realistic, don't get me wrong, but it was just like, we both kind of was just like, I don't know if I'd have done that, but I get it. I get why they did it, and it knocks it off just a tick from perfection for me, but it's really good. It's going to wind up on both of our lists for best movie of the year. There's definitely needs to be some Oscar and award consideration for possibly Cooper Hoffman, but I really think David Johnson deserves a Best Supporting Actor nod for this. He does a lot of heavy lifting as a character in this as Peter McVries. Incredible performance from David Johnson. I want to give him his flowers here. And just so good, so smartly done, so well written. Like you said, it hits all of those notes. You go on that emotional journey. It's brutal. You feel for all of these characters, and you feel in that moment. Like, it had such a hefty emotional impact on me. I'm giving it a 9.5, just a shy under a perfect movie, but this is one that I will definitely watch multiple times just to, go back on that journey if I need to, and it's just incredible. I had an outstanding time watching this for sure.
Yeah, this is one that I want to watch it again, but it's not something I'm going to be able to watch too often because of that emotional impact. It's up there with me for like those type of films like Schindler's List and something like that, like amazing films, but they have such a hard hit to them that it's like, all right, I'm gonna revisit it every now and then, but it's one of those that's gonna hit hard. It's probably not gonna have the box office that it should have, but it's an amazing film that should be seen. The Long Walk is in theaters now. Please go check it out. It's one of the best films of the year. You're going to get hit emotionally. You're going to get some laughs. You're going to get some brutal violence. It's not an action movie, so don't go in thinking about that. You're going in along with this journey with these guys, and it was really an incredible film.
Yeah, I cannot say enough good things about it. Go check it out. Come to our social media posts. Tell us what you think about the film if you've seen it. It is absolutely phenomenal. One of the movies of the year for sure. One of the best ones, and it's definitely going to wind up on both of our lists.
We are now partnered with Dubby Energy. Dubby is a clean energy drink to give you focus with no crash or jitters like other energy drinks.
Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. It also features 0 calories, no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial dyes.
From Dragonade and S'mores to Push and Punch and Galaxy Grenade, Dubby has a wide range of flavors for you to choose from.
Use code WBTP to save 10% off your Dubby Energy orders and look for a direct link in the audio and video descriptions. So now I want to move us into our TV review of the week. We have episodes 4 through 6 of Alien Earth, where we kind of left off here. We're going to have heavy spoilers as we move in to discuss this, obviously, because several episodes to talk about, a lot of plot points, a lot of spoilers. So just to dive right in, where we left off with episode 3, you start with Wendy coming to the realization that she may be able to communicate with these alien creatures, and you kind of leave very ambiguously like what's going to happen to her. Well, we jump right in with episode 4 of her just kind of waking up and sees that the doctors are running tests on her. We're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Why can she communicate? And it kind of really just jumps off from there because she feels like she's been chosen by the aliens to communicate with them and was given this ability. And then you have just this moral discussion of, do you go back and kind of reprogram her basically to not remember how to do it? And, you get Boyd just kind of jumping in and saying, no, leave it, let her be able to, communicate with them. And we want to see where this leads. And
he doesn't care.
It really just jumps off, and we're really in what I feel like is full swing on this story now, where it's found its voice, and now we're full speed ahead to what is really an exciting next 3 episodes, because, man, they do a lot of world building in 1 through 3, but here we really take off, and it gets action heavy and drama, and it gets a lot of stuff thrown at us here in these next couple episodes that I'm really excited for the direction of the show.
Yeah, these 3 are really meaty because you're getting into more of the deeper stuff. You've got Wendy questioning kind of her existence and who she is through these 3, and also she's getting the connection to the xenomorphs where she can, communicate with these alien creatures, and you have Boy still showing that he doesn't really care about the lives of anyone or anything. It's about what they can do for them. Like, if you're not helpful for him anymore, you're gone. You don't need to be here. And you also get, his back and forth with Yutani, because, of course, these specimens were their property from the ship that crashed and everything. But, yeah, 4 really gets us going through that. We're seeing all the experiments that they're doing. But we also get into, which, especially by the end of 6, we see as a big story point here, is that, we know that Morrow had slipped a little communication device on Slightly, has been talking to him, trying to befriend him. But we also get the turning point here where Morrow's kind of done playing games with him. So, Morrow ends up taking his family hostage, and the family learns that he's alive. And he's like, all right, I want you to get me one of these eggs. Like, I can't get in the lab. Like, I can't do this. He's, Slightly is a very nervous adult kid. Like, remember, the Lost Boys are kid minds inside of adult bodies. So they're still struggling with, am I a kid? Am I an adult? How do I do these kind of adult things? And, Morrow just had enough to where he's like, all right, if you don't want your family to die, you need to get me one of those eggs. So how do I get one of them out? Then he brings up the idea of like, well, bring a human in with you and just let one of the alien creatures latch on, and it'll be okay for them and everything. But that's how you'll get them out. And Slightly really struggles through like episodes 4 and 6 and exactly, do I do this? How do I do it? Why do I do it? Can I do it? But we also learn that Kirsch is aware of it all. He's sitting there listening. He's watching. He knows what's happening. And we get a really interesting dynamic that happens because of that. Because, again, Kirsch is a synth, but he's not like the Lost Boys. He's more machine than he is human, because the Lost Boys have their human brain to it while Kirsch really doesn't. So you get that different aspect of the sense with him, because he's kind of emotionless and he's looking at things in a much different way than the Lost Boys do.
Timothy Olyphant is so good at playing a villain, is so good at playing a bad guy in this. You don't know what his motives directly are yet, or what he's got going on, but he is kind of overseeing everything, and he's very practical, obviously, like synthetic cyborg kind of like hybrid or whatever. And there's some funny interactions with like, when you get to like episode 6 where him and Morrow wind up in the elevator together and just have a little trash talking back and forth between the two of them. And it was
lightly
kind of
threaten each other.
Yeah, it was kind of fun seeing that. Like, you go through so much stuff in these 3 episodes. Like, it's crazy because you have, like you said, you have this storyline with Slightly trying to keep his family, his real family, alive. And, is it going to come at the expense of the family he's got now with the Lost Boys? And, who's he willing to sacrifice to get this done? Is he willing to sacrifice somebody? And it weighs very heavily on him for sure in these episodes. And, you get, Morrow with what he's going through, trying to, take care of his kid and, do what Yutani needs him to do so he can, take care of it and all that. He's got his own motives, but then you've got the rest of these, Lost Boys, especially Wendy, who has her brother with her now that they've been reunited, and he's trying to low-key, and he's not very effective at doing it, but trying to find a way to maybe rescue his sister now that he knows she's alive and get her away from Boy and get her away from this Prodigy program that, and it's a very interesting interaction that he has with Kirsch, where he's like, Kirsch is like, what are you trying to free her from, and what do you expect to get out of this? Like, she's not technically alive anymore, but she has her, like, what are you expecting to happen here? He's like, she can live for 1,500 years, and he's like, you're not going to do that. So what are you trying to get out of it? It's some really fun, like, interpersonal dynamics that happen here, but man, I really want to show some love to episode 5 in particular on this, because this felt so much like a throwback Alien film in one episode.
It felt like the original Alien in a way,
like
their version of the original Alien.
It was a ton of fun, where it takes place primarily on the ship where the creatures escaped from, to kind of get the backstory of how it got to it crashing and kicking off the events of episode 1. And it's just a phenomenally done episode where you have all of these people, you have a saboteur on the ship, you have, just this really cool story told of how these things break out and take over the ship, and how Morrow gets it to crash land inadvertently into Prodigy territory, but, gets it back to Earth as it's intended to be. And it was just a phenomenally done episode.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting us to go back to the ship, because, we had seen them waking up in the very beginning. We got to see the crash with the xenomorph attacking some of them, and then pretty much the entire crew dying but Morrow. And now we jump back, and we got to see it all unfold, and I wasn't expecting it, but it did feel like we just got a mini Alien movie inside of, because that ship definitely has the aesthetic of the original Alien, the look, the feel, the lighting, the colors. We got a bunch of different horror aspects with it, with the little eel slug creatures and the eyeball creature and the xenomorph, and you get a good mix of different type of horror in there. At times the xenomorph was like almost standing a little too human. At times that you could tell, okay, they didn't fully commit, and at other times it was creepy crawling all around, but we got a mini Alien movie inside of this, so that was really fun to see, and see those different characters. We got more of that one creepy guy who's just always standing over the women in the cryo sleep and stuff, and we get to see what exactly happened to him, which is very satisfying to see something with a guy who's that creepy, which bravo to the actor for pulling that sleaze bag off. But that was a nice, and I hate to see it because someone dies, but that was a nice scene that we got out of that, just because I hated that guy so much.
There's a lot of awful people.
You're such a creep. But you also feel sympathetic, because you've got like the captain who's kind of losing control of stuff because there's so much going on with the specimens and the fire that broke out, and you got Morrow threatening to take stuff away, and she has to answer to Mother, and she's got so much going on that she's trying to balance, and the crew's not respecting her outside of that as well. And I felt that it made her end be even more impactful to me, because it's like she tried to do things right, but just everything went wrong and failed, and you got to sit in emotion with her when she saw someone, you know, get killed by, I believe it was by the eyeball alien and other stuff inside of her, saw two of them die. Like, she was really impacted by their deaths, and you see that she's kind of breaking down, and Morrow being the cyborg and stuff, all right, now I'm taking over the ship. But it was really interesting to be able to go back onto the ship and see it all unfold and stuff. But that was a fantastic episode. You got action, you got horror, you got suspense. Like I said, it felt like their 1 hour version of the first Alien film within this universe. Like, I think that it's not as good. I'm not trying to say it's as good as Alien, because that's a masterpiece to me, like that original. But this was one of the best episodes of the season, just because it gave you that horror, it gave you the alien action, and it just felt like classic Alien.
Yeah, it felt very authentic. It was a nice touch in the middle of a season. Like, a lot of times you see what you like to call a flashback episode, and that's kind of essentially what that was. But it was like you said, it had a lot of the aesthetics of the original Alien film, and it was just so well done. And it was a real highlight for me, because a lot of times when you go back and have those flashback episodes, everybody's kind of like, they're usually like the weaker episodes in a season, where it's just like, we want the backstory, but can you give it to us like while things are moving forward? But this was really well done, and I really did enjoy it. And one of the central themes of the show is there's just not a lot of good people like in this story, because I'm watching it with a couple friends. I want to give a shout out to Bill in particular, who likes to come into our YouTube comments and talk about these episodes and stuff with us. And I've been watching it with him, and we're both kind of in agreement. There's just like one halfway decent person left on this show, really, where a lot of people you're hoping get very satisfying ends, especially like Boy. Like, we're just waiting for Boy to get his comeuppance at some point. But yeah, that episode itself was phenomenal. Episode 6 really kind of launches stuff forward too. Like, you get, you know, what happens with Slightly in his, you know, journey to get this egg out, to get it to Mara to save his family, really comes to a head in this one, where you see more people dying. You see just some real consequences of people's actions carrying a lot of weight in this episode, and very heavy action oriented. Gotta give a special moment to the sheep with the eyeball creature, because good Lord, that is terrifying. And it's funny, but it's terrifying at the same time. But really gruesome, brutal deaths in this episode that carried a lot of weight, especially with one of the synths. Won't spoil it for who hasn't seen it yet. Unfortunately, does meet their demise in a very brutal and gruesome way in this. And then you have the story with, you know, Arthur, you know, just not wanting to wipe the memory of one of the synths and being very anti it, and he gets fired for it. Like, we have to, like, it kind of help pushes the events of the end of this episode here, where he doesn't make it out of, you know, his employment there, and they're like, well, you're not going to do what we want. We're going to fire you. You got to get out. Like, a very brutal corporate, like a very brutal corporate thing like that happens there, where he's just like, well, disobeyed a direct order. You got to go.
Also relationship wise, because his wife is the scientist doctor right with him, and he refuses, and his wife says, I will do it. And it's okay. There's a little tension there.
A little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, you got that relationship drama that happens, because those are probably the two who are trying their best to do good, but he's a little bit more good than she is, because she makes a few decisions, because a lot of it was around Nibs. And in episode 4, Nibs kind of has a breakdown. She says she's pregnant. She's going after Dame, like almost attacking her and stuff. You see something switched off in her mind. Yeah. And so for 6, they decide that they're going to erase from the tower, from the crash to now. And so you get a really interesting scene between her and Wendy, where Wendy's sitting on the bed talking about her pregnancy, and she's like, what? Yeah. It was right after the crash. What crash? And so she has no idea. So it really sets off an interesting chain of events with Wendy, because now she's questioning a lot of stuff. She's had Kirsch in her ear talking about how synth should be, because, you know, Kirsch wants her to be more synth, and while they're trying to get her to stay more human. And there's a really interesting dynamic that's opening up. All right, so how are these Siths and cyborgs and these hybrid humans and stuff, how are they all going to be interacting with the human element and what's going on at Neverland? And it creates a really interesting dynamic going forward, especially where we leave Wendy, where she's basically writing off humanity. Like, maybe we don't need humanity anymore. Maybe humanity's the problem. Like, whoa, you might have just created something even worse than a xenomorph.
Yeah, that's a turn in and of itself, right? So really interesting dynamics at play here. I want to talk about one of the more absurd scenes from any of the episodes we've gotten so far, and there's this kind of corporate level mediation scene that happens where, Boy Cavalier and Yutani show up to a mediation to try to resolve this dispute over who these, who not only the ship, but who these specimens truly belong to. And obviously Boy, being the evil mastermind genius that he both is and thinks he is, makes the argument like, hey, I'm more than willing to give you these things back, but we got to follow protocol here. And there's a mandatory quarantine period. And Yutani's very much like, I know what you're doing. Just I'm willing to accept the risk that it could pose to get these specimens back from you. And there's a very funny, like, outlandish monetary dispute between the two.
And he's got his feet on the table. They're dirty and filthy, no shoes on.
Just absolutely disrespectful. I'm like, can this guy die already? And I'm not like that with many characters, but he has Joffrey from Game of Thrones.
There's going to be cheers when he gets his comeuppance.
Yeah. But just that level of annoyance with the character where you're just like, can this guy die already? And I'm going to feel very satisfied, hopefully, when that happens.
Oh, but there was some brilliance to that, too, because I just had to laugh at what he was doing, because she's like, well, let's do 10 million. And he's like, and I want him now, or 10 billion, and I want him now. It's like, oh, okay, 20. And she comes back, 15 billion. Oh, okay, 25 billion. I'm going to go over that. And they finally agree on 20. And he's like, okay, and you'll get him back after the 2-week or 6-week quarantine or whatever it was. Yeah. And she's like, no, I want him now, 50. No, I'm good on 20, and you have to wait for the 6. Like, I hate him, but he played that. It was so vicious the way he played her, because he's got a bunch of money, and he gets to keep them for several more weeks and stuff, and just rub that in her face. But that also sets her apart. Like, all right, now it's time to get Morrow. Morrow, do what you need to do to get me this back. And it sets off what could be, we've only got 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
So this really could set off a chain. Like, there's multiple things that set off chain events. You got this with Morrow potentially, he could be heading to the island now. And you got Slightly, who at first he tried to get Hermit to be his kind of human sacrifice, and went off like, why does Wendy get her brother here? But he gets called off on patrol with his former team members and stuff. And so, unfortunately, and this is going to be a big spoiler, we've already done plenty of spoilers, but he lands on Arthur because he's sitting there at the lab, Slightly is, and he's going to go in to try to figure some stuff out. And Arthur shows up because he had seen, because of him in a scene with Hermit, which they know they're being listened to and they're being recorded. And like, well, here, Wendy's vitals are good, but he's actually typing stuff in the computer to show, and he actually turns off the trackers for all of the Lost Boys and stuff, but it notices that Toodles' tracker has gone offline, and he goes to the lab to check it out. And unfortunately, Arthur ends up being that kind of scapegoat that gets some stuff happening to him. But I kind of wish it was Hermit in a way instead of Arthur, because I think you could have had a much bigger impact with Wendy, where you left Wendy with this episode, and if it ended up being her brother that had stuff happen to him like this, I think you would have had, I could just picture her commanding like the xenomorph to attack Slightly and end him and stuff like that. And it's very curious to see when you use Arthur for it, if it's going to have a biggest impact as it would have been Herman. And you can go back and review the first 3 that I'm a little annoyed with Herman, because he's had that kind of super survival stuff. Like, he survived 5 times against a xenomorph already, which I almost pretty much beats the record of Ripley and others. Like, he's survived the most of anybody in the Alien universe that I can think of right now, because of how many times he survived a run. And it's like, he survived a little too much, and I think it would have had a big emotional impact. But I'm really curious to see, because not only with using Arthur potentially to get him out, to get the specimens out, you got those little flying bugs are now free. So you have Wendy going off the edge. You have the Lost Boys, like with Nibs, with kind of losing her mind a little bit. You have Morrow and what he's going to do. You have Kirsch and his experiments, and what Boy and Yutani are doing together. You've got a lot of different elements that are really building to potentially a crazy final 2 episodes.
That's what I'm hoping for, because like you said, you've got the last 2 episodes to see where really jumps off to, and I'm excited to see where they go with it, because I really feel like everything's really pushing forward now. Like we're getting into some heavy stuff here, and I'm excited to see where they wrap it up. But yeah, like these last 3 episodes, just so well done, and it really pushes things forward where you're like, okay, now we can start seeing, you're starting to see more people's motives, you're starting to see intentions. Now let's really pay it off with a bang here, and how this is all going to come to a head, because it's getting to that point now. And I think they're doing a good enough job at moving things along in a way that, each episode, I love that they leave on the stinger of something crazy to lead into the next episode, on top of just throwing in some awesome music on top of it. I love how every episode ends with one of those. There's a Tool one on there too, like so good, and it's fun stingers to lead into the next week. And this is one that I'm glad we're kind of getting weekly, because I don't know if I'd have the same experience if I could watch all 10 episodes together like that, but going on this weekly journey for this that we've had, and I know we're kind of reviewing them in bunches, but we're watching it weekly as well, and it's just a ton of fun to kind of wait in anticipation to see what they're going to do with this next episode. And it's been a fun ride, and this is something I look forward to watching each and every week, and it's been a fun journey that they've taken us on so far.
It's been better than expected, because it doesn't stick to the traditions of the Alien universe. It's kind of doing its own thing and rewriting a few things, but you're along for that ride. And it did start off a little slowly at the beginning, but these 3 were a really solid chunk that really moved the story forward, but gave so many points, not only to end the season, but to go forward with, because we got so much drama between all the different groups, and with, these creatures that they're going to have to, at least one of them's going to have to escape and get out in the open, and we'll probably season 2 leave Neverland and go into, bigger parts of the Earth and everything else. But they're really setting up so many different angles that they have a lot of story that they can still tell past the season, which I'm liking. That we're not going to get, at least right now, we got 2 episodes, not going to feel like we're ending with everything buttoned up. We're probably going to have a lot of stuff left open at the end of this, and probably end on a very brutal moment in the final episode that'll leave us wanting and waiting for that. But yeah, it's these 3 really solidified this. This is a really solid series that they've done a really good job with, of not only paying tribute and honor to like Aliens and Alien, mostly those 2. Feel a little bit of Romulus, but I mean, it's not exactly what Romulus tried to do, but it's really paying attention to what came before it, but also doing its own thing.
Yeah, and I like that, because that's what you want to see when somebody tries to put their own spin on it. You don't want it to be a carbon copy remake of what you've already seen. They take elements of what made Alien work, and they try to tell their own story with it, and I think they're doing an effective job with it. I don't think it's as close to canon to the Alien films as maybe some people were expecting, even us, maybe with some of the preconceived notions that we had of what this was going to be going in. But it's very, very cool to kind of see them do their own thing with this and see the world that they're building here. And I'm in agreement. I don't think we're going to get everything buttoned up, because truth be told, we're not reviewing next week's episode next week. We're going to wait 2 weeks at least until the season finale drops to kind of give a full recap of those 2 episodes and talk about how we feel about the season as a whole. But I'm in agreement there. I feel like we're going to leave with some very poignant questions on where the series is going for season 2. This feels like it's going to be a multi-seasonal show at this point, which I'm all for if they can continue to marry the quality storytelling with the violent aspects of it and the horror elements that they've done well enough so far that I hope they can carry forward into future seasons. But I'm definitely looking in agreement with you that it's looking like a multi-season show, and I'm here for it. I'm ready for the journey that it's going to take us on.
I'm waiting to see what rock song we get to end the season and see if there's got to be something that just has a good little impact in there.
Has to.
Yeah, because like I said, with 6, you end with the sheep just looking out, and you get Godsmack playing over top of it, and it just fits. It does feel kind of out of left field at first when you first started getting that, because you've got a more orchestral score, and you have more alien like music from the films and stuff, and then the episode's over once that rock beat hits in. And at first it was like, okay, we're getting rock music, and now it's like, all right, okay, it's over with. I see where we're going. I see what this is doing. All right, I know the episode's over with now once I get that rock song kicking in. And but these really just solidified as a solid season so far, and I really hope they nail the landing with it, because they've set up a lot we're going to see what gets tied up and what gets, kicked forward into another season. But there's still a lot in this universe that they can play with, which makes me excited for more. Like, you don't always get that with a series, that if it's wanting you to revisit or go back or to continue with it. But with 2 episodes left, it's got me wanting to see how they end it, and it's already wanting me to see how they proceed with something new in another season.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not going to stay isolated to this island that they've been on for the entirety of the show. So they're going to branch off into other areas of the planet. So I'm excited to see where that jumps off and springs forward to something hopefully bigger and better in season 2 and beyond. But yeah, you can watch all of the episodes of Alien Earth are available on Hulu and Disney Plus right now. The first 6 episodes are out. We got 2 more to go through. Excited to put the button on the first season here in a couple weeks when the last 2 episodes have dropped and talk about it. And I'm just having a blast with it. Go watch this show. Mm-hmm. If you're a fan of the Alien films, if you're a fan of, those type of science fiction, adventure, violent, a good combination of those in a story, I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of the show for sure.
Yeah, this week was an interesting one. I wasn't expecting The Long Walk to have as big of an impact on me as it did. Like, from the trailer, it looked like they nailed the story really well of the book. They made plenty of changes and stuff, but I mean, it has such an emotional gut punch. It makes you feel the deaths to have a reason, because you can have so many films that have death that just kind of, well, this is just for action purposes. You don't care if they die, but you're caring about all these because it's, once a film starts, it's mainly that core cast and the military guys, because you get a few observers, those people who are just there, and you get some kind of depth to the observers, because someone like, you just want to see people die and would see this and that, and they're like, well, they may actually have this part of their humanity as well. That's a family spending time together, even though it's dark and morbid, that they're spending time together sitting on the side of the road waiting to see if someone gets killed and stuff. And especially the ending with the cheers and other things that happen. Like, it was just really profoundly emotional, hard-hitting film that I wasn't expecting to hit as hard as it did, but I'm glad it did, because it just made that story and that film just so much better.
It's always fun when you get a story like that just kind of stays with you. Like I said earlier, like, there's not a ton of films, because we watch so many, and 2, because I'm kind of partially dead inside anyway. But it's very rare to have a film like that really sits with me for several days after having watched it. And like, even as we've been talking about it, I'm still flashing back to things I've seen and just feeling some of the emotions that I felt. It's rare to have a movie sit with me for that long. One, because we're so quick to move on to the next thing and do what we do. But this film, I think, is going to sit with me for a while, and I've been thinking about it. And it's I love when a movie can grab your attention like that and leave you feeling things and just thinking about your own life and thinking about stuff like that. It's not always needed in a film, but when they get it right, it's really special and really well done. And I think they absolutely hit a home run out of the ballpark with this one, man. Just such a good film. Please go see that one. It's absolutely phenomenal. Go see it. You need to see it in theaters too, just to kind of get that ambiance and that feeling out of it. But if you can't make it to the theaters, give it a chance when it gets on streaming. Please, you will not be disappointed.
As our screening, I thought we were going to have some issues with talkers. We had someone who's playing videos on their phone loudly before the preview started, and a lot of people talking and everything else. But once the movie started and like that first death happened, like, that was a quiet theater. You weren't hearing anything. It was a packed theater, and it was a quiet theater because everyone was impacted by the movie and stuff. And it just, again, talking about Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson, just, David from Alien Romulus said everyone fell in love with him there. And Cooper Hoffman had a great debut in Licorice Pizza and stuff like that. Like, you've got, and of course, his dad being the pedigree of Philip Seymour Hoffman and stuff. But these are 2 just great actors who have had 2 back-to-back great debuts, vastly different between the 2 films in there, but they're both off to an incredible start for their acting careers, and I'm really wanting to follow and see where they go, because they've just give, David's Alien Romulus performance was vastly different than what he gave in here, and it's good to see that just those layers and the different ways that they can handle stuff, and just kind of the emotion that Cooper was able to give in The Long Walk was just really fantastic. And Alien Earth kind of along with that was just giving us some throwback alien action, but also really getting into the meat of that story, so that you're really getting into like, all right, what's going to happen, who's expendable, who's not. Like, you're not caring as much, at least I'm not, about the characters in Alien Earth as much as I did with The Long Walk. But I really want to see what happens with Wendy and what happens with the Lost Boys and what's happening with these. Outside of them, it's like, okay, who's going to be the cannon fodder and who's going to die next, and like who's going to be fed to the xenomorph after this. But it's a really interesting mix of that dark horror sci-fi with a dark, impactful, emotional, like futuristic but retro. Like, it doesn't really give you the time period, as I mentioned. Like, it was written in the 60s. It was supposed to kind of be an allegory about the Vietnam War, but we get a little modern technology with the weapons and the military vehicles, but it's a very small town that feels like it's still stuck in the 60s or 70s. But that aesthetic really, I believe, helped that film a lot.
For sure. And I want to go back and give one last little bit of flowers to David Johnson in particular. Like I said, I am now a huge fan. I enjoyed his performance in Alien Romulus, I did, but this, I feel like, just kind of flipped the switch for me, and to just see just the amazing talent that he possesses. And I am chomping at the bit to see what he does next. Like, I want to go see everything that he's been in, and I want to see everything he's going to be in moving forward. Big fan of David Johnson coming out of this film in particular. Just unbelievable performance. If he's not nominated for awards at the end of the season for, the next award season for things that come out, there's something seriously wrong. The man should be given just all of the praise in the world. I'm not underselling how good he is in this film. He's just absolutely fantastic. Phenomenal. He's, in my opinion, he's the heart of the film. Cooper Hoffman does a good job as well. I'm not taking anything away from him.
There's two great performances. David, I think, does a lot of the heavier lifting in this film, from like keeping everybody together. Just the way his character was written and the way he performed, it was just chef's kiss phenomenal. So ecstatic that he was in this, and just really made the movie extra special for me. Yeah. So that's going to do it for this week. Coming up next week, we do have a little bit different look at two different films. We have the football horror film Him, and then we have the drama with Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. We're going to be reviewing both of those next week. And until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio room on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.